Welcome to Top Advisor Marketing, where you will learn how to become a prolific online influencer, attract more ideal clients, and grow your practice. Brought to you by Top Advisor Podcasting, a done-for-you podcasting solution built just for trusted advisors. And now, your co-hosts of Top Advisor Marketing, Kirk Lowe and Matt Halloran.
Hello and welcome to another Top Advisor Marketing podcast. We are going to talk to a fellow marketer today. Now, this is going to be super fun because it's neat when every marketer does something just a little bit different. And so, if you don't decide to work with us or your marketing person down the street, maybe you will find something that Jillian Bannister, who's the CEO of Extension Marketing, says today. And you'll be like, yep, I finally found the marketing person that we want to work with. Because here's the deal. It doesn't matter who you choose. You just have to choose a marketing person and get somebody in your corner. And the cool thing about what Jillian does, and the reason why the company is called Extension Marketing, is because they've set themselves up as the extension of your team, which I think is super cool. So Jillian, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks, Matt. Happy to be here.
All right. A couple of quick things. First off, I ask everybody the same question on the beginning of the podcast, which is, I want to know your history. Like, how did you start Extension Marketing? Tell us a little bit about your journey in financial services. Would you mind starting there?
Yeah, no problem. I was working in financial services for many years on the client side, with a colleague of mine and we identified this white space in the market where anytime we wanted to outsource to a firm or an agency about a product launch or a white paper, we just couldn't find an agency who really understood the products, the services, how things are bought and sold, the conversations between advisors and investors. We couldn't find those people out there. So we decided to jump in to that white space. And we did that 11 years ago, both leaving our client-side jobs and built this little agency. And now we're about 28 people with some really, with technical writers, some CFA level, and a creative studio producing lots of material.
Cool. Well, let's before we get into the three trends that you're seeing, let's talk about the creative studio. I just had the opportunity to interview a guy who was approved on LinkedIn to do LinkedIn Live, which was, by the way, very hard to get. And he's really, really good with video. What sort of media are you producing and can you produce for our audience?
Yeah, well, that's changed a lot over the past 10 years. I mean, it used to be, PDFs and papers and print-related stuff, as you remember, I'm sure. And now, we're seeing digital. So video, but short video, LinkedIn posts. LinkedIn is like the best platform that we've seen for financial advisors. And blogs, people are still blogging, sharing. I mean, it's become a digital world. So we're doing a lot more content in that sphere.
One of the things I say on this podcast all the time is the opening to this book that I'm writing, which is communication has fundamentally changed. You have to communicate to your clients and prospects in the medium they prefer while they're there. And I love that you just
complicated.
It is. It really is complicated. But what you have already identified is something that we hear a lot on the podcast, which is LinkedIn is really, that's the professional place to be. If you're going to prospect and you're really looking for that fellow professional, whether it is to outsource, to be an extension, to prospect, LinkedIn is a very, very powerful tool.
It is. And, a year ago, I was at a conference and, someone in the social media space was saying Facebook was starting to edge up, but I really haven't seen that. I know financial advisors do use Facebook, and it is a good distribution channel, but time over time, we keep on seeing that LinkedIn is delivering better results.
Let's talk about these three trends. So I love it when I talk to other marketing people and they say, you know what, these are the things that I'm seeing that are working and not working so that our audience can glean, the best of the best thinking and the most current thinking. So Jillian, what are you hearing right now?
Well, marketers always pick three. Things in three are easy to remember.
Yeah.
So there is, method behind the madness of picking three. The first thing that we really, and our roots are in content. Yes, we have a creative studio, but the way we look at things is really content first. And today, that's really works because everything is about creating content that maps back to your brand. And your brand is ultimately, what you are selling. This is a relationship business, and you've got to be authentic. You've got to be out there as well. So we've created this little catchphrase called, creating your content alpha, and that's because content is really one of the best ways to set yourself apart and show, thought leadership, build credibility in the marketplace. I mean, there's lots of studies out there that show, previously people would evaluate a business or a stock based on past performance and financial data, which is all, backward looking. But today, everyone is evaluating you and your business based on reputation and forward looking things.
Mm.
So it's a very interesting time from that perspective to be thinking about your brand and how you are distributing it out there, and the narrative that you're ultimately selling and pushing onto the marketplace.
And the brand aspect, which I think is one of the other trends that you're going to talk about today, really is how to get in front of that reputation. But that's how I think about it. How do you think about it?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Reputation is sort of one aspect of brand. I mean, I think of things in sort of the tangible and the intangible. And in the old way of evaluating a brand or a stock price was really from a tangible perspective, right? Tangible balance sheet, tangible P&L, what have you. Everything today, and that has a lot to do with social media and a lot to do with technology, is evaluating you on an intangible basis. So, what does that mean? It means, looking at you based on, what are the reviews that you have out there? Do you have a good reputation? And there's a lot of things that ladder up to create that reputation. Do you seem authentic when you are sharing something or communicating out to your audiences? Those are all the things that kind of play into that brand development, and that's what makes it so complicated today, and why brand has ultimately become more complex than just what's your unique value proposition.
Sure.
That's just not good enough anymore. You've got to be doing something more and thinking differently about how you're communicating who you are out to the marketplace.
So let's talk about that because that was a magnificent statement there. When you are helping a financial services professional come up with their brand, would you mind sharing maybe just some of the questions, or how do you get people, I don't know, kind of warmed up and moving and thinking correctly about being able to answer those bigger brand questions?
Yeah, it's interesting. So we have a very set specific process
Hmm.
to unearth those ideas because it's not always easy and natural to think like that, right? Marketers do it very naturally and easily, but that's just not the way everybody thinks. So we have a set of questions that we ask and interview our clients on, tease out those ideas, and then we feed those ideas into a framework. So it sounds very process driven, and it has to be, but what you end up getting is something that's built on real rational thinking and fact, and it plays into a framework that you can leverage for creative execution. So I hope that's not too marketese, but that's how we approach that with our clients.
No, I think it's wonderful. And because, in some industries, having that level of process and making sure that the user, your client, understands that there's a process. We work in financial services. It's all about processes, and
Exactly.
so we have to be able to tailor. And there are very few marketers, Jillian, who are really truly able to communicate a process and allow that process to work in our industry.
Yeah, and I mean that's where our roots are from. I mean, everybody on our team is what I call an expat from the financial services business.
Mm.
So we come from that world of process. So it's a natural thing for us and
Hmm.
our team. But I agree with you. I mean, it's a lot of creative agencies or creative thinkers. Process isn't always that easy to commit to and follow. But I would say our process. The other thing is it doesn't take up too much time
Hmm.
because we also know that at the end of the day, our clients, they want to be in front of their clients. They don't want to be, taking a long time or exerting a lot of effort into that process. So we've really developed some best practices around how to make it efficient as well, which is also very important when time is money.
Yeah. I love that. Thank you for being cognizant and showing the respect to the entrepreneurial business owners that we both work with, that this is not their bailiwick. It was a huge leap of faith for them to hire somebody to help with this, because what makes a great advisor doesn't always make them the greatest marketer, right? Because they're generally quite controlling, which is good because I want my financial advisor to be there. They're highly detail oriented, and a lot of times they think very black and white. So it's a
Yes.
big step, right, for them to hire somebody like us to help them uncover really what makes them truly unique and different. So we started off with the three trends. So content alpha, right? We just
Yep.
talked a little
That's
bit about the
number one.
brand, right?
Yep.
And then
Yep.
what's the third one?
Well, today, and this again ties into, social media and change and how we do business today in this modern world. And that is the whole notion of marketing to communicating with specific targets. And so by that, I mean, the millennials. We see a lot of institutions and financial advisors trying to crack that millennial code. And the interesting thing about millennials, just as an aside, is now we're reading a lot more. It's not just about millennials. How do we engage with them? It's the subsets of millennials. Some millennials, have become more affluent. Some have not. Some, it's really like a dissection of these personas. And millennials is quite an interesting one because there was, as you probably remember, so much hype about tapping into this market and how do we communicate with these people, and they've evolved and changed too. So there's a lot there in
Hmm.
terms of figuring out how you're going to create a communication plan, an approach to these segments, and in some cases, segments. Another area that is hugely popular and becoming, a huge source of attention for a lot of FAs is women, and that's another one that's ultimately people are, women are making more money and they're becoming more control of, of their own finances and investments. All that data has been out there for a long, long time. I think today we're also trying to figure out what's the right approach, and how do we tailor our conversations and the stuff that we're putting out and frame it so these unique target audiences, um, it's relatable to them, because as you said at the beginning, people want to see what they want, when they want, how they want.
Hmm.
So that's their, frame for evaluating what you're delivering out to them. So again, it makes things more, every financial advisor's practice just becomes so much more complex from that standpoint. But again, I think that speaks to the fact that you really do need to think strategically about your communication plan and what content you're focusing on and what you're putting out and to whom.
I love the idea of having a very specific target. Somebody said this somewhere at some conference longer ago than I'd like to mention, but what most advisors do is they'll go out in the middle of the Pacific Ocean with a net, and they throw the net out and they hope they're going to catch what they want, right? Which a lot of times for them is whales, and I'm air quoting there. But if you know who you're hunting, right, where you're hunting them, what they want to eat, or what they're going to consume in our situation, it makes hunting a lot easier. Something that you said is we were kind of prepping for the podcast today is when it comes to millennials and it comes to other sorts of niches or targets or segments, you talked about socially responsible investing. Would you mind spending a little time talking about that?
Mm.
Because we've had some really great SRI people on the podcast in the past, and they were very, very well received, because I think so many people want to understand that there are ethics and morals and things that are in line with their value systems out there that the clients and advisors can invest in, and that does really separate you from the advisor down the street.
Yeah, and that's interesting because, and I just want to go back to something. that you mentioned earlier about having a focused target. Marketing, oftentimes people think about marketing, oh my gosh, how can I say everything all in one,
Hmm.
pitch? The trick about marketing is what you're not going to say. What are you going to cut and leave on the editing room floor? And what are you really going to hone in on and focus on? Because people, they're not going to be able to take in everything. And then it just becomes like Charlie Brown's, teacher speaking if you're saying too much. So I just wanted to state that because I think that supports this idea of really having a focus and being able to make and not being afraid to make that decision and say, I'm not going to, spend my time thinking about how I'm going to communicate with this group. I'm going to focus on this and this other group. And I think that's really essential for success in this business. But back to the ESG SRI, it's again another segment. It's not demographically oriented, but it's a preference oriented. I mean, we know from studies out there that investors are looking for, and actually, in fact, women and millennials, funnily enough, fall into that category. They are interested in ESG and socially responsible investing ideas and products and solutions. And we also know that the big bottleneck, actually, from the sale of that taking place, or the real momentum of ESG products being sold, is advisors not knowing how to sell them
Mm,
and really stumbling on that sale because talking about they're always thinking about performance
mm.
and having those traditional arguments. But we've done a lot of work actually with a few advisors who have said, I want to convert my book. We worked with one actually, last year. They converted $80 million of assets in a
Mm.
6 month period by focusing their message, focusing their story, and focusing their work effort and their operational office around switching those assets over to ESG.
Mm.
And this advisor has built a huge sort of brand around that now. So it's definitely a trend. It's something that everybody has to think about. Now, not everybody wants to convert their whole book. They don't think
Sure.
that doesn't make sense, and that's fine. But if you need help thinking through that strategy, because that is a very big strategic question, but we certainly would love to help and have a conversation around that.
My last big question for you today is, and somehow something you just said triggered this, and I honestly don't think, Jillian, I've ever asked a fellow marketer this question, which is, so that office specifically, right? So they made a big sales process, communication point, branding change. How long does it take for somebody to implement and to establish a brand after you help them create it?
Mm,
I mean, you've done a bunch of these, right? And it's not one of those things. And I want our audience to listen. You invest usually a nice amount of money because it's absolutely worth it because it changes everything. And advisors sometimes think that, well, I got a new website, new logo, new talking points, new blah, 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 new social media profiles. And then everybody immediately is going to go ahead and understand. Do you have can you give a range maybe for our audience to say, okay, so if Jan 1, if they hire you at Extension Marketing to go ahead and rebrand them, by the time that it's pervasive and understood within their client base and their centers of influence, do you have any sort of guidelines on that?
well, that is a very good question, Matt. I mean, the fact is that today, content, brand, it is a commitment, and it doesn't exactly how you described. Just because you have a new website doesn't mean a lot. You need those. I would think of those as like, the foundation of your house, something like that. But it's really a set of building blocks. Timeline, we look at LinkedIn strategies and what the reports are saying out of social media, and people are generally saying you need a good 6 to 9 months in market to start seeing some traction. Now, start seeing some traction. There's certain breadth there, but it does take time. I mean, I think a realistic expectation for a firm would be a year in market before, and then you take some measurements and you see what's working, what's not. The other thing we really try to educate advisors on is this whole notion of test and learn.
Mm.
It's not a natural thing again, because back in the day, I mean, you put out a brochure, there's your brochure. There's no A/B testing there. But the world is so much more dynamic and fluid today. So, you put out a LinkedIn message with this headline and you put in a LinkedIn message with that headline, AB, you're going to get different results. And you need to measure against that and figure out what is connecting or resonating with your target audience more. So it's this test and learn kind of idea that I also think people need to understand and be willing to try. But ultimately, it comes down to the word commitment.
I love A/B testing. We do A/B testing all the time here, personally in house. We've done some A/B testing for our clients. That's actually not what we specialize in, but it's like real time, Jillian. Like I could
Yeah.
see who's clicking where right then and there. I just think it's amazing, and so many of the things that people used to pay these. Yeah, I'm going to use Mad Men as an example, but these marketing companies, right? And everything was really black box, right? Nobody knew really where they came up with the stuff or any of those things. Everything is so transparent today. And all of the things that you would have to pay, a madman company, hundreds of thousands of dollars for, we can get in clicks now on social. We can Google what are the biggest hashtags, what are the biggest searched words, what are the biggest whatevers. And we have that information right at our tips. And before Facebook got slaughtered on Capitol
Right.
Hill, the other stuff that we were able to get was amazing. And from a marketing perspective, and I know everybody's real paranoid about it, but from a marketing perspective, I could place an ad directly to you who I know would value that ad. And you couldn't do that before, right? It was always Thursday night must see TV on NBC, and Crazy Larry would get on and start screaming and yelling about his used cars, right? That's not marketing anymore. That's not branding anymore. You have to communicate in that medium. And I think you guys have really, really figured it out. All right. My last question for you today is, if you had one piece of advice for a newer advisor or agent who's coming into this business, when it comes to marketing, what would you tell them?
I would tell them to work with a professional marketing person. It's hard to see the forest through the trees, and working with, probably an external resource to do that is, and it sounds like I'm, a little self serving, but it's not, because you will spin your wheels and take a lot of time trying to figure this out on your own. And today, business models today are, if it's not my area of expertise, I'm going to outsource it. So I think my first piece of advice would be to find someone to work with. Absolutely.
Dan Sullivan recently came out with this kind of new thing, what's probably within the last 5 years, but it's who, not how, right?
Right.
And I love that. I love the idea of the greatest coach of all time saying, you don't have to be the one who does it. You need to stay in your lane. You need to find somebody who can do it for you. And I think that's one of the things that we love having marketers like you on the podcast, because they get an opportunity to get to know you. They hear your voice, they hear your energy, they hear your thought leadership, and you could very well be that who for our audience. And everybody, what Jillian just said there, you have to have, a key professional in your corner that's truly going to be an extension of your team. You do it with financial planning. A lot of you do it with operations. A lot of you do it with your investment management. Why marketing is no different. It's just the same sort of process that you need to have in place to communicate your message so that you get the ears of the right people so they'll walk in your door. Jillian, man, you're a rock star. I'm super excited. If anybody wants to find out a little bit more about you or Extension Marketing, how do they reach out?
Well, I'll share my email, so I would be happy to have any conversations with people who are interested. So my email, jbannister, JBANNISTER @ proudmouth-marketing.com. I'd love to hear from you.
Wonderful. We'll make sure that we also have a link to your LinkedIn profile and also your website in our show notes. So, hey, you know what? Thank you, fellow marketer, for being on the show today.
Thank you for having me. It was a great conversation, Matt.
If you have not subscribed to the podcast, I don't know what you're doing because, you should have subscribed, 100 episodes ago. No, I'm just kidding. But here's the deal. You probably know a financial services professional. And after you heard Jillian talk, you're like, you know what? I think that's the person for Jane or John or Joe. Just forward this to them. Say, hey, you know what? Take 26, 27 minutes and listen to what she has to say at Extension Marketing, because I think we finally found the person who can help you communicate truly who you are. If you have any podcast ideas, all you have to do is email me at matt@topadvisorm, and then M is for marketing.com. Or if you have any feedback, whatever, we'd love to hear from you. And for everybody at Extension Marketing, Jillian Bannister, and all of us here at Top Advisor Marketing, we'll see you on the other side of the mic very soon.
Are you ready to change the way you communicate with your clients? Are you tired of being the best kept secret in your area? Learn how to become a prolific online influencer, attract more ideal clients, and grow your business. Contact us today and see what the power of podcasting can do for your business. Click on the Contact Us link on our website at topadvisormarketing.com and set up a call to learn more. Follow us on LinkedIn and Facebook for more updates and information.
This was brought to you by Iris.xyz, a platform helping financial professionals become better in business and life through new media and new voices. Visit them and learn more at iris.xyz.